That evening began like any other, quiet, ordinary, and deceptively harmless. Yet as I sat alone in that small hotel room later that night, I realized something unsettling. Life doesn't warn you before it changes. It doesn't knock. It simply walks in, rearranges everything, and leaves you standing there, unsure of who you were just moments before. My name is Sophia, and at 47 I thought I understood life well enough. I believed in routines, in stability, in knowing where I stood. But that day, what started as a simple trip to visit my husband, Nathan, became something entirely different. Nathan had been away for months, working in another city. At first I told myself it was normal. People travel. Work demands sacrifice. But over time his absence became more than physical. It felt emotional, distant. His calls grew shorter, his messages less frequent. It wasn't just that he wasn't around, it was that he seemed to stop caring. Loneliness has a quiet way of settling into your bones. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And that whisper had been growing louder with each passing day. The morning that started it all. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I remember studying my reflection carefully. Despite everything, the loneliness, the silence, I still looked good. My hair fell neatly over my shoulders. My skin still carried warmth. And there was something in my eyes, something alive. But it wasn't enough anymore. Feeling attractive means nothing when no one is there to notice. I sighed and grabbed my bag, heading toward the kitchen. Ethan, my stepson, was finishing breakfast, casually scrolling through his phone. At 22, he had that effortless charm that came with youth. A mix of confidence, humor, and just enough mischief to make you roll your eyes. "Ethan," I called out, trying to sound firm. "You're going to college soon. You still need to improve your driving. Come on, take me to your dad." He looked up, that familiar grin spreading across his face. "All right, stepmom," he said teasingly, "but on one condition." I crossed my arms. "What now?" "Tell Dad to get me a better car this summer." I shook my head, half annoyed, half amused. "We'll talk about it. Just get ready." At that moment, I thought it was just a simple trip. I had no idea how wrong I was. On the road, the drive started smoothly enough. Ethan played music loudly, singing along without a care in the world. Every now and then, he'd throw in some ridiculous joke and laugh at his own humor. It was oddly comforting. I sat in the back seat, scrolling through my phone, occasionally glancing up at him. There was something about his energy, so light, so carefree, that made the heaviness inside me feel distant. For a while, I forgot about Nathan, forgot about the silence, forgot about everything, until the car made a sharp hissing sound. Then everything stopped, stranded. "What was that?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. Ethan frowned, pulling the car over. "I think..." The car broke down, just like that. We were stranded. No signal, no nearby town, no help. At first we tried everything, calling mechanics, checking the engine, hoping it was something simple. But hours passed and reality slowly settled in. The car wasn't going anywhere, and neither were we. Finally, we had no choice but to find the nearest motel. The motel. By the time we reached the motel, I was exhausted, physically and mentally. Ethan handled the front desk while I stood behind him, arms crossed, frustration building inside me. "If Nathan finds out about this," I muttered under my breath. But strangely, a part of me didn't care. Something about the situation felt different, unpredictable, almost like the beginning of something I couldn't yet understand. The room. When we opened the door to our room, my expectations collapsed instantly. It was small, too small, one bed, a single nightstand, dim lighting that flickered, like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or give up entirely. The air conditioner barely worked, and the lone window looked out onto a dull parking lot. "This is it?" I said, disappointed. Ethan stepped inside, dropping his bag casually. "What were you expecting? A 5-star hotel?" he joked, flopping onto the bed. "Relax, it's just one night." I didn't respond. But the truth was, it wasn't just the room that made me uncomfortable. It was the situation. One room, one bed. Just the two of us. An unsettling awareness. "I need a shower," I said, breaking the silence. "Go ahead," Ethan replied casually. "Make yourself at home." I hesitated for a moment, glancing at him. He looked different here. More relaxed, more grown. I quickly turned away, pushing the thought out of my mind. This was wrong. I stepped into the bathroom and shut the door behind me. The mirror. For a moment, I just stood there staring at myself again. My hair was slightly messy, my skin warm from the heat, but still, I looked alive. "I'm 47, I whispered softly, "and he's 22. The numbers echoed in my mind, but they didn't feel as clear as they should have. I turned on the shower and stepped under the water, letting it wash over me. I hoped it would clear my thoughts. It didn't. Instead, my mind wandered. To Nathan, to his absence, to the quiet nights, and then to Ethan. A shift in feeling. There was something about being alone in that room together. Something about the isolation, the unpredictability. It created a tension I couldn't ignore. Ethan wasn't a child anymore. That realization unsettled me more than anything else. I stepped out of the shower, wrapping myself in a towel, trying to steady my thoughts. "This is nothing," I told myself. "Just one night." But deep down, I wasn't so sure anymore. Dinner alone. Later, I decided to go downstairs to the motel restaurant. I needed space, time to think. The restaurant was small but cozy. I ordered something light and a glass of wine, hoping it would calm me. But it didn't. My thoughts kept drifting back upstairs, to the room, to Ethan, to the strange energy I couldn't explain. The more I tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. Returning to the room. When I finally returned, the room was quiet. Too quiet. I opened the door slowly and stopped. Ethan was asleep, fresh from a shower, lying on the bed, completely unaware of my presence. For a moment, I just stood there. Something shifted inside me again. Something I didn't fully understand. I stepped inside carefully, closing the door behind me. The room felt smaller than before, closer, more intense. The night begins. I took a deep breath and sat on the edge of the bed. "This is nothing," I whispered again. "Just one night." But as I looked around that small room, I knew something had already changed. Not outside, but inside me, and that was far more dangerous. That night didn't unfold all at once. It crept forward slowly, quietly, like something testing the boundaries before crossing them. When I sat on the edge of the bed, watching Ethan sleep, I told myself over and over again that this was just a strange situation. Nothing more. Just an unexpected stop in a cheap motel room. Nothing that would matter once morning came. But the truth was, it already mattered. Something inside me had shifted. Restlessness. I tried to lie down carefully, leaving as much distance between us as possible on that small bed. The mattress dipped slightly under my weight, and for a moment, I froze, afraid even that small movement might wake him. But Ethan didn't move. His breathing remained slow, steady, peaceful. I turned my back toward him, staring at the dim wall, trying to force myself to sleep. But my mind refused to quiet down. Every sound felt louder. The hum of the weak air conditioner, the faint noise of a passing car outside, even my own heartbeat. And then, awareness. I could feel him there. Close. Too close. A mind that wouldn't rest. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, thoughts began circling. Uninvited, persistent. Nathan, his absence. The distance that had grown between us. And then, without warning, Ethan, his laughter earlier that day. The way he carried himself so effortlessly. The way he made even a frustrating situation feel lighter. I opened my eyes again, frustrated with myself. "This is wrong," I whispered internally. But the more I tried to push the thoughts away, the stronger they returned. A moment of awareness. At some point during the night, I felt movement beside me. Subtle, almost unnoticeable, but enough to pull me out of that half-sleep state. I kept my eyes closed at first, unsure why. Maybe I didn't want to break the moment. Maybe I didn't want to face whatever was happening. Ethan shifted slightly, sitting up on the bed. I could sense it without looking. The change in space, the quiet pause in his breathing. And then, stillness. It felt like time itself had slowed. I could feel his attention, not touching, not speaking, just there, watching. The tension builds. My heart began to race. Part of me wanted to open my eyes, immediately, to break whatever. Invisible tension had formed. But another part of me stayed still, listening, waiting. It wasn't fear. It wasn't comfort either. It was something in between, something uncertain, something fragile. A moment that could go in any direction. Breaking the silence. Finally, I opened my eyes, slowly, carefully. Ethan was sitting a short distance away now, on the chair near the corner of the room. The dim light cast soft shadows across his face, making his expression harder to read. But his eyes, They were clear, focused, and unmistakably aware. For a second, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt heavier than words. Unspoken thoughts. "What are you doing up?" I asked quietly, my voice softer than I expected. He hesitated before answering. "Couldn't sleep," he said. Simple words. But something about the way he said them carried more weight than they should have. I nodded slightly, sitting up. "Yeah, me neither." Another pause. Another silence. But this one felt different. Not empty. Full. A conversation that changed everything. Ethan leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on his knees. "You've seemed different lately," he said carefully. The question caught me off guard. "Different?" I repeated. He nodded. "Yeah, quiet. Like something's on your mind." I let out a small breath. "There's always something on my mind," I replied. "That's not an answer," he said, almost smiling. For a brief moment the tension eased, but only briefly. Truth beneath the surface. I looked down at my hands. "Your dad's been gone a long time," I admitted. The words felt heavier once spoken. Ethan didn't interrupt. "He used to call more," I continued. "Used to care more." Silence followed. But this time it felt understanding. Not awkward. Not uncomfortable. Just shared. A different kind of connection. "I notice things," Ethan said quietly. I looked up at him. "What kind of things?" "Like when you're pretending everything's fine." But it's not. His words hit deeper than I expected. No one had said that to me in a long time. Maybe no one had noticed. The shift. Something changed in that moment. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But enough. The distance between us didn't feel the same anymore. It wasn't just about the small room or the single bed. It was something internal. Something emotional. A connection forming in a place it shouldn't. Crossing invisible lines. I stood up slowly, needing to move, needing to breathe. The room felt smaller again. Warmer. Closer. Ethan watched me, but not in a way that felt intrusive. More like he was trying to understand something. Or maybe waiting. For what? I wasn't even sure. The edge of something new. "Maybe we should just get some sleep," I said finally. It sounded like the right thing to say. The safe thing. Ethan nodded, standing up as well. "Yeah, probably." But neither of us moved right away. We just stood there, a few steps apart, the air between us charged with something neither of us named. A night that wouldn't end. Eventually we returned to the bed. Carefully, quietly, keeping distance. But the awareness remained. Stronger now, impossible to ignore. I turned away again, closing my eyes. But this time, I knew something for certain. Sleep wouldn't come easily. Not after this. Not after whatever had just begun. The realization. Because the truth was no longer avoidable. It wasn't just about being stuck in a motel. It wasn't just about loneliness. It wasn't just about Nathan. It was about something deeper. Something dangerous. Something that had started forming quietly. And was now impossible to ignore. Here is the final part of your story. Written with a strong emotional resolution. Focusing on consequences, clarity, and a meaningful ending. Morning arrived quietly. Too quietly. The faint light slipping through the thin curtains felt almost unfamiliar, as if it didn't belong to the same world as the night before. For a few seconds I lay still, staring at the ceiling, trying to gather my thoughts. And then it all came rushing back. The long drive, the broken car, the motel, the conversation, the silence that said too much. I closed my eyes again, exhaling slowly. Something had shifted between us the night before. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to leave a mark, enough to change how I felt, enough to make everything complicated. A different kind of silence. I turned my head slightly. Ethan was already awake, sitting near the edge of the bed, looking down at his hands. He didn't notice me at first. Or maybe he did, and just didn't know what to say. The energy in the room felt completely different now. Heavier, real, not like the uncertain tension of the night before, but something clearer. Something that demanded acknowledgement. Facing reality. "Morning," I said softly. My voice broke the silence, but it didn't ease it. Ethan looked up, giving a small nod. "Morning." That was it. No teasing. No light jokes. Just a single word, carrying more weight than anything he'd said the day before. Unspoken questions. For a moment, neither of us moved. It felt like we were both waiting, but for what, I wasn't sure. An explanation? A denial? A way to pretend nothing had happened? But the truth was, something had happened. Not in actions, but in feelings. and those were harder to ignore. The conversation we couldn't avoid. I started, then stopped. Finding the right words felt impossible. Ethan looked at me, waiting. "We should talk," I finally said. He nodded again. "Yeah, we should." There was no hesitation in his voice, no confusion, just quiet acceptance. Drawing the line, I sat up, keeping a small distance between us. "What happened last night?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. It can't go any further. The sentence hung in the air, clear, final, necessary. Ethan didn't react immediately. He just listened. I was confused, I continued, lonely. And maybe I let myself feel things I shouldn't have. That was the hardest part to admit. Not to him, but to myself. His response. Ethan looked down briefly, then back at me. "I know," he said. "Simple, but sincere." "I felt it too," he added quietly. "But that doesn't mean it's right." There was no argument in his tone, no attempt to change my mind, just honesty. A moment of understanding, and in that moment I felt something unexpected. Relief, not because the situation was easy, but because we both understood it. We both saw the line, and more importantly, we both chose not to cross it. The weight of choices. "Your dad," I began, then stopped again. Even saying his name felt complicated now. "He deserves better," I finished. Ethan nodded slowly. "So do you," he said. His words surprised me. I hadn't expected that. A different perspective. "For what it's worth," he continued, "I think you've been alone for a long time." Even before he left, I didn't respond immediately, because deep down, I knew he was right. Letting go of illusions. That realization hurt more than anything else. Not what almost happened, but why it almost happened. Loneliness, neglect, silence in a marriage that was supposed to feel like home. Moving forward. "We'll forget this," I said quietly. Ethan shook his head slightly. "No," he replied. "We won't forget it." I looked at him. "But we'll learn from it." A new understanding. That was the difference. Forgetting would mean pretending it never mattered. But learning meant accepting it and choosing better. The journey continues. Later that morning, Ethan managed to arrange help for the car. Everything felt strangely normal again. Too normal. Like the world had reset overnight. But inside me, nothing was the same. On the road again. As we drove again, the silence between us returned. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was calm. Understood. We didn't need to fill it with words. Because everything important had already been said. Thinking about Nathan. My thoughts turned to Nathan again. But this time, they were different. Clearer. Stronger. I wasn't just going to ignore things anymore. I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. Because it wasn't, and it hadn't been for a long time. The real turning point, that motel night, it wasn't about Ethan. Not really. It was about me. About realizing what I had been missing, what I had been tolerating, what I deserved. The end that was actually a beginning. As the city came into view, I took a deep breath. Whatever happened next with Nathan, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the same person who had started that journey, and maybe that was the real reason everything happened. Final thought. Some moments in life feel wrong when they happen. Confusing, uncomfortable, even dangerous. But sometimes, those moments don't exist to destroy you. They exist to wake you up,